I still remember when I realized that I couldn't hold mom's care together by myself. I had one mom, one big diagnosis, and it was so overwhelming. Nicole Smith didn't get one diagnosis for a family member. She got 3 in about a year. Her mom's Alzheimer's took hold right as the world shut down in March of 2020. Then her stepmother was diagnosed with aphasia. And then her dad had surgery for something most of us have never heard of. It's called MPH. 3 parents, 3 diagnoses, 1 daughter trying to hold all of it together. And she's still doing it today. Nicole calls herself the good daughter. And she wrote a book called Diagnosis, Dementia for the exact moment when you don't know where to start. If caregiving ever showed up for you all at once with no manual, this conversation is for you. Hi, my name is Jeanette Yates, and I'm the founder of The Self-Caregiver. I cared for my own mother for several decades and now help caregivers set boundaries and use simple tools that make care and life easier so they can feel good, not guilty. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm enjoying being here.
Yeah, I met Nicole. I don't even know. Maybe we met on LinkedIn or something, but I have loved meeting people online and then welcoming into my sort of in real life space, even though we're on Zoom essentially. But welcome. I'm glad you're here. And like I always do for my guests, I always like to start with, before we get into your book and your advocacy work, which we're going to dive into in a little bit, I want you to take me back to where your personal story with caregiving starts. So back to March of 2020, everyone else is freaking out about everything else, and you have this other situation that lands in your lap. What did those early days actually look like for you?
Yeah, it was really crazy. So I was living in New Jersey. My mother was living in Los Angeles, and my aunt, my mother's older sister, who is a nurse, said I needed to fly to Los Angeles to go to this neurology appointment with my mother. She's like, you have to go. I'm like, okay. And at the time, I was naive. I was like, okay, mom's going to the neurologist. But I thought, okay, well, at a certain age, we get our mammograms and we get our colonoscopies. And I kind of thought, well, maybe this neurology thing is just kind of another checkup. Like I just really didn't know anything. And so I said, yes, I'll go. And it was early March. She had made the appointment like 6 months prior, because that's usually the lead time. And then I called my aunt and I said, well, what's this virus thing? Do you think I'm going to be able to get home? It's like, oh yeah, no problem. It's fine. Nobody knew. And my husband, the day before I left, he's like, hey, can you just go to the grocery store before you leave? And so I bought like $450 of groceries before I left and just pack the house. So anyway, I get to LA and I go to the appointment with my mom, and I get thrown out of the appointment within 5 minutes of being there because the neurologist asked a question and I answered truthfully and my mom lied, and I called her on it because I didn't know anything. And then my mom got mad. So the doctor just sent me out in the waiting room. So I flew 3,000 miles basically for nothing. That's how it all started.
That's not a great start.
No, but then I did make it home. And then I had 2 kids in college, 2 in high school. And then I had to do 5th grade over again with my youngest, because as the world shut down, he was he's a bouncing ball. So I had to sit there with him online Zoom for school for 5th grade. And I'm still not smarter than a 5th grader, even going through it twice, but here I am. So that was the beginning of my dive into dementia.
And then how did the next 2 diagnoses come onto that conveyor belt of stuff you had to deal with?
Yeah. So my mom was isolated in LA. My sister lived 15 minutes from her, but she had asthma and she was terrified she was going to die. I mean, it was a very real fear. And so she wouldn't go see my mom, even to sit outside or anything. So, and I said, Mom, we'll come get you. You can be part of our New Jersey bubble. She would have none of it. No, I'm not doing that. So isolation, lack of socialization is a huge, huge factor in dementia. And so her being alone for 6-9 months, it was not good for her brain at all. So she started getting worse and worse. And then so as the world started to open up, and then I started to try and start flying back to visit her and figure things out with my aunt in Iowa, where I grew up, where my stepmom and dad live, things started to kind of break down. So I was consumed with everything with my mom, but then I knew my stepmom was having issues with her speaking, being able executive function and different things. And so my dad was orchestrating that with her, trying to figure out what her issue was. And she was only 70. And then my dad had an incident. So he had gone to Mayo Clinic 8 years prior because he had this normal pressure hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain. And there's 3 different kinds. It can be, I think it's wonky, wacky, or wobbly. So wobbly is when you have it's causing physical impairment, which is what my dad have. Wet it causes incontinence, and wonky it causes cognitive challenges. So he had gone to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and they identified that he had it and he could have this shunt surgery. But, surgery is risky. And at the time he wasn't completely debilitated. And so they decided to wait. Well, and then, progressed 5 years later, my stepmom was having issues, and then he was having more challenges. So then he decided to book his surgery. So I flew to Iowa to have the surgery with him, which was literally just a really quick thing, one night in the hospital. And it was absolutely miraculous for him. So,
well, that's good news.
Yeah, no, that was good because now he's the caregiver for my stepmom and he's got his life back and it's all doing really well. So, and not everyone has as good of luck with this surgery, but his was absolutely miraculous.
Well, and I think anytime you have like the one parent they're the caregiver, and you still have to have your finger on the pulse of things, because as they age, things could change again. And I know we're getting ready to talk about how much you talk with caregivers all the time, but it's like, oh yeah, my dad's helping my mom, or my mom's doing stuff for my dad and grandpa. And it's like, yeah, but what happens as they get older, or what happens if a diagnosis happens to them? And then of course, it's the same thing for us, right? We have to also pay attention to our own things. But you had all of this going on at once. You talked about your mom being isolated during the 2020s. And I remember that sort of happening with my mom. She had people that were like helping her, do grocery shopping for her and all this kind of stuff. But then when everything happened and they were encouraging people to not be near people that were immunocompromised and had all because, that was part of my mom's problem. There were people just so afraid to go see her and talk to her. And then I think that's one of the things that hastened my burnout was I was really the only one doing that. But it was one of those weird times where we had to balance, health versus your emotional health and all of that. And it is such a hard thing to have to deal with. So I know many, many caregivers that had to go through that same kind of thing. And, we'll talk a little bit more about other ways that impacted her later. But I just wanted to mention that as you were talking, it reminded me of that time with my mom as well.
Yeah. And it comes through in your book, how debilitating that was on you. Like, you're just like, oh my, yeah, it comes through loud and clear in your book, and it's totally legit. I get it.
Yeah. Well, it's like, on the one hand, you're like, I'm not the social director, but in this particular instance, there was no other option, so it is very exhausting. But all of that to say, just like you just supported me and advocated for me right now, you are a certified senior advisor. So you went through all of this stuff with your parents and your stepmom and of course your kids at home, trying to deal with all of that. And then you didn't just get through it. You got through it and thought, I'm going to help other people navigate similar situations. And you became the certified senior advisor. You're also a Daughterhood circle leader, and you even host, is this correct, Death Over Drafts?
It's a national thing. Yeah. I
love that. Death Over Drafts in Tucson. And so I want you to tell us about all of that. But what made you, before you get into each one of those, what made you go from you're just a daughter trying to navigate all of this to becoming an advocate?
Yeah. Well, experience is the best teacher, right? So I had these 3 parents in different states going through different things simultaneously, and I had to figure it out. I turned to books. I couldn't find a book that explained all of it the way I wanted to digest it. And so I wrote one, but there are a lot of books out there, a lot of good books. I've read over 65 books on dementia and caregiving now. But so my mother was in Los Angeles, right? So she had all of her documents done, trust, will, advance directive, HIPAA, everything. And I did not have the power to move her out of her house. It was a nightmare. So I had no power, even though she had everything perfectly tied up in a bow legally on paper. And then as I started going through this, I just, kind of did a gut check with Dad. Hey, Dad, you've got your will and your, stuff. No, I hate lawyers. I don't have anything. I'm like, what? So I literally had to bully my dad into doing all this stuff. I mean, and then we went to two different lawyers, and then I mean, it's a long story, but so I'm learning because every law in every state is so different. The legalese is different. The procedures are different. So I was like, okay, well, then I didn't know if I was going to move mom to New Jersey. So I had a New Jersey elder law attorney. So I had elder law attorneys in 3 states simultaneously. So I'm learning from them because I'm trying to get ahead of it, right? What's going down? What does guardianship mean? What does conservatorship mean? I don't want to go there. Am I going to have to go there? So between all of these things, I'm just learning as I go. I'm learning about dementia. I'm learning about surgery. I'm learning about law. So that's why my book breaks it down into the legal, the medical, the financial, the emotional, the logistical, the practical. Because I tell people it like becoming a caregiver is like learning 4 new languages simultaneously under duress. So the legal, the medical, the financial, and the caregiving. So what's a CNA? What's a SNF? What's all this? Every industry has its own acronyms. And so I had to learn all those.
Yeah. By the way, for anybody who's listening and just heard her say SNF, it took me a while. That is skilled nursing facility.
Correct. Yeah. No, I mean, legit, I didn't mean to, yes, because everyone says an acronym. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you are having to learn a new language all the time. And then you do get really good at it. And so you became an advocate. So I want you to just, and this may be vary from state to state as well, but tell me exactly what a certified senior advisor actually can do for a family that's just starting their journey. And I'm assuming that you can advise people even if they don't have the exact diagnosis that you're familiar with. So as you become certified, you learn.
Yeah, it's about navigating caregiving. So you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the terms. You don't know where to start. You're overwhelmed. Like most of us are just one phone call away becoming a caregiver, and you don't know when that's going to happen. From a fall, a scam, an accident, a stroke. So common. So that's why I have my old red rotary phone that I bought at a thrift store, and I post that all the time because it's the bat phone for caregivers. I mean, so a certified senior advisor is literally an expert in aging. That is the tagline. That's the mission. And so it's based in Denver. And what I did was I had to read some books, take a course, a 2.5-day course, and take an exam. It's pretty basic, but it covers a lot. So you're kind of like, a little bit about everything, but an expert in nothing. So I like to refer to it as I'm your Rolodex. Like, do you need to downsize? Do you need a realtor? Do you need an elder law attorney? Do you need an advisor? Do you need a tax accountant? Do you need a social worker to help? Do you need a patient advocate? So I'm building my network in Tucson, but I also have a national network of certified senior advisors. So we have an annual conference every year in August, and that's coming up in Denver this year. They move it around. So it's going to be in Denver this year. And a lot of this certified senior advisors, a lot of people get it as kind of like a second certification. So we have attorneys, realtors, tax accountants, but I'm just kind of like advising, just senior stuff because I'm a daughter.
Well, and so as you were talking about being a Rolodex, what I think also people should know is they can hire somebody or connect with somebody like you, and you may not know what you need. So as a caregiver, so you come to someone like you and I would imagine every time I talk to caregivers, it's like you say, hello, how are you? And then 45 minutes later. And so you listen to what's going on, and then you can figure out, okay, this is what I need to pull out of my Rolodex for them. These are the things they need next. I think that's so helpful too, because a lot of times the tools that are out there are like, they're the tools, but you're like, is this what I need? I don't know. I don't know if I need an estate lawyer or which is regular lawyer, or like, do I need a financial person or a law person or both? Or so being able to talk through and have somebody that, like you said, understands the landscape and can tell you where you need to go is so helpful.
Right. And it saves you a ton of time, like floundering around. So I say, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a physician, but I am a communicator and a delegator. So I started to build my team, and I was so fortunate. So my youngest son, he had this really good friend, this little friend, and the little boy's mom, I knew her through mom stuff and birthday parties and stuff. And I literally thought she was in like real estate or something, because she was at this building and whatever. And then when all this hit me, I was like, oh, she was in sales for a CCRC. And I was like, oh, that's what you do. I was even in a networking group for 5 years. And this one person from Oasis would stand up every time to tell, we should get caregiving. And I was like, yeah, whatever. So, and then all of a sudden it's like the light bulb goes off. And so Allie, my friend, was my ally. And so I just literally started just bombarding her with questions and what do I do and how do I do it? And she was just like, blah, 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 because she'd been in it for 10, 15 years of that already. And so she was my go-to source for everything. And that was my fire hose initially. Well, but that's the thing. It is overwhelming, but my curiosity got cranked up to DEFCON 1. And I have practical application for all of it.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Once I'm experiencing something, I feel like I have to learn every single thing about it, which is why my thing going on right now is this care tech stuff, because it's everywhere and it's overwhelming. And I'm like, well, I want to understand it for my family and my in-laws and other people that are, potential future recipients of my care. And I want to or myself even. And so like you do, I love that we have that same like, ooh, let's dig in. Let's go all the way to the bottom of the rabbit hole.
Right. And there's so many people out there doing what we're doing, but I'm in tech. I'm going to create an app. I have this business. so there's a lot of people getting into the wild, wild west of elder care because they've had the experience and they kind of see it as a way that, oh, I've got a solution or this might help, or I'm going to use my expertise, which is great, but that adds to the overwhelm. It's like, okay, which of these 5 check-in software phone things should I get? Who's the legit person that, and is not charging, $999 for this?
Right. Or selling my stuff to email lists or whatever.
Right. Or they get you on the subscription and you forget. And then you're, 5 months later, like, oh my God, why am I getting charged $50 a month for this, whatever check-in app? Yeah. Or it's on your phone and you're, oh shoot, I forgot I signed up for that and I never use it. And now I'm getting charged $40 a month. And just like, all those subscriptions.
Yeah. So that's a good point. And I feel, it's one of the reasons I do the podcast is to communicate what's out there, not necessarily. And of course, by default, I guess I'm contributing to the noise, but I hope.
Well, no, but I mean, podcasts are good. They're free. You can start. No, I love the podcast. I absolutely love the podcast. I learn a lot from podcasts. And the first podcast I found when I had a moment to breathe was Love Conquers Alts. So I found that it was great. And then they led me to Dementia with Dignity, the Dawn Method. And then, it's like, that was the rabbit hole I followed it. And then this, and then more books. And then, you got to educate yourself. Yeah. So pick your medium. Is it books? Is it podcasts? Is it movies? Is it conferences? I do all of it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I also want to give you some space to talk about Daughterhood. You do circles. So explain to everybody what Daughterhood is and then what the circles are and then how you're a part of that.
Yeah. Daughterhood was started by Ann Tomlinson about a decade ago. So she is in DC. And she is in the space. She's runs an advisory firm. She's testified before Congress. She's very involved in this whole space and has been for decades. And then her father got ill and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm an expert in this and I can't even navigate this. So she was, again, personal experience. So she started Daughterhood as a place for women, mostly women, daughters, but we allow cousins, spouses, men, anything. So she said, we need a place for us to get together and just talk about this. And so there was about, I think a half a dozen or 10 cities around the country that held these where, you bring your wine, you bring snacks and you come talk about aging parents or challenges. And then of course, COVID changed everything. And so at that point, Daughterhood rebranded, became a 501c3. So now it's a nonprofit and went all virtual everywhere. And so there's topic circles where we talk about a specific topic. So I lead the navigating aging parents topic and the sandwich generation topic circles. And then there's just connection circles where you just log on. And like you said, you tell your story and vent and cry for everyone, 10 minutes, whatever, and just get it all out. And then the best thing that happens is that everybody on the call is in the thick of caregiving or in the thick of grief, or, they get it. And so maybe if your friends don't get it or your colleagues don't get it, you're among people who get it. And then people learn from each other because someone's like, oh yeah, that happened with my mom and this is what I did. So you all of a sudden, instead of being like really upset, you're like, oh, I can pay it forward and help other people through my experience. It's amazing.
Yeah, I have some friends that do some circles on Daughterhood as well. So I'm familiar with it, and it is a great resource. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I joined this online community and now I help the community. I'm part of the advisory team for this new online community called Impera. And what makes it unique is it's anonymous. So for people who don't feel like they can, and this happens a lot, where people are like, I don't know that I can say the thing I really feel in a room of other people, whether it's online or in person, but they need to get it out, right? And so I love this resource. I have been a part of a lot of anonymous community, or not a lot. I've been a part of 2 other anonymous communities before for different aspects of my life, and they were really helpful to me. And so I love that there's places like Daughterhood, or platforms like Daughterhood, I guess I should say now, platforms like Daughterhood, but also things like Impera that give you the opportunity to be anonymous so you can say that thing that is burning a hole in your chest.
Yes, I'm like that. I have to get it out. Like my husband buries everything, but I'm like, get it out, get it out, get it out, just.
Yeah, my husband and I always laugh about, because he's the same way, but King of the Hill, do you remember that show? Yeah, but anyway, like the dad one time told the son, like, you just got to take that feeling and shove it all the way down until you get a tummy ache, and then you've done it right.
Oh, yeah, but true. I mean, that's what a lot of people do. Yeah. I literally feel like one day my husband's going to implode, but so far we're good. So good.
So anyway, I'll make sure to link Daughterhood and Impera in the chat, and also the information for how people can get in touch with you about care advising. But I want to talk about something else that I am passionate about, you are passionate about, and a lot of people throw this term around and nobody knows what, they think it's going to do something, but it doesn't. So we're going to talk about powers of attorney. One thing you talk about often is powers of attorney. Why do you think securing POAs is so important for caregivers? And why do a lot of families not have them?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. And I will tie it into what you just said. So the anonymity that you can get from different groups is very helpful. So, we don't like when people are anonymous and they spew derogatory information, right? So, but the one place where anonymity is good, and this happens a lot on Facebook groups, because in all these caregiving Facebook groups, Dementia, AARP, you can post your comment or whatever anonymously, and that's great, because it's like, I need help or I'm struggling, and I think that's great. The one thing that I see too often on Facebook groups is people giving legal advice. And that is not okay, because they're in their little state or their little corner of the world or their little situation. And they're like, oh yeah, you just need to trust. Well, maybe you don't. So do not get your legal advice from Facebook. Please do not. And I am not a lawyer.
And I was gonna say, and we are also not giving legal advice.
Exactly. So powers of attorney are critical for anyone over 18. So your kids go to college, yourselves, and your parents. And it's not easy, right? So one thing that stops people is like my dad, lawyers are expensive. I'm not wasting money on that. Well, if you don't spend the money to get an attorney to draw up these powers of attorney, then you're probably going to end up spending the money in probate court. So probate is the name of the procedure, the court, the process of when someone dies in settling their estate. So when someone dies, then they have to open probate unless you figure out how to avoid that. So we can get into the weeds really quickly. And again, I'm not a lawyer. So powers of attorney, there's 2 basic types of powers of attorney. There's a power of attorney for basically financial. So who has the power to make financial decisions for you. And then there's power of attorney for medical. So it names a proxy or a person that if I'm in a coma or I had a stroke or I'm incapacitated and I'm not able to speak for myself, then I designate my husband, my daughter, my friend to make these decisions for me. I've talked to them. They know what I want, what I don't want. And so I trust them to make those decisions. So that's a power of attorney for medical. Power of attorney for financial is an initial document that kind of can get you in the door, but it's not a free pass, because you take it to the bank and they're like, oh, it's expired, or we don't accept that. It is a start, because if you get a good estate planning attorney or elder law attorney, they're going to explain these documents to you. They're going to explain what they mean. They're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions, because literally you're going to run into roadblocks no matter where you go. And this is what happened to me, because I took it down to the bank. They're like, well, we don't accept powers of attorney at Wells Fargo. Then you need to bring in the trust. Well, what if you don't have a trust? So again, but they are the starting point, and there's all kinds of different terms and different things. And again, have an attorney explain. Yes, you can download it off the state website, but you don't know what you're checking. What's an attorney? What's an attorney in fact? The lawyers, they go to school for 3 years to learn this stuff. And that's why you're paying for their expertise and their advice.
Yeah. And another thing, and I don't know if this is, and again, we're going to say it again, and it's going to be in the notes. This is not law advice, but I do also see something a lot of times in the groups that people don't realize until it's too late, but power of attorney does you no good once your loved one passes away.
Correct. They die with the person. Yes.
Yeah. So it's for when they are not able to make decisions. Sometimes it's used during a surgery or something like that. Or, my mom was, had to be intubated a ton of times, and then they would state what she wanted. And sometimes I had to really insist that's what she wanted, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the other thing. I say pick someone who's not afraid to stand up for you. If you've got someone like my husband who hates conflict, doesn't like to talk, isn't going to rock the boat, then they're going to be like, yeah, whatever, go ahead. You need someone like you or me. We're going to get in their face and stand up and say no. And I mean, you have to choose a strong person that's not afraid of conflict, that knows what you want. And so you can outline what you want in the advance directive or the living will, where that's a more comprehensive document that brings up all these issues. So I'll reference the death over drafts thing real quick. So it's a national movement run by Stephanie out of LA, who's a social worker, and it's death over drafts, but you get together and drink beer or whatever and talk about death. And so there's different chapters all over the country. And so we use the death deck, which is a deck of cards that talks about all these, what if and this and your scenario. So we gather in a casual setting and we bring all this stuff up. So you can come by yourself and check it out. You can bring your loved ones, and that way it's not such a crazy, scary conversation. Hey, we're just going to go have some beers and check this out. So there's different ways to approach it.
Thanks for bringing that up, because I had not heard of that, but I love that idea. And I think, a lot of times there's so much of this caregiving stuff, so much of this aging stuff that is so hard to start the conversation. And then I will say, because of my long journey with my mom, I get desensitized to a lot of stuff. So sometimes it's not a great time to talk about it, and that's fine. But really, because I'll just bring it up any old time. Any old time is fine with me.
Well, my big thing lately has been, okay, we're in July. So I've been using the Christmas in July, right? So it's Christmas in July. Let's plan for Christmas now in educating ourselves about elder care options and how to start the conversation, because you don't want to bring it up just randomly while you're pouring gravy over your turkey at Christmas. Hey, let's talk about death. Where are you going to be buried? What's going on? So, but if you educate, there's the 5 wishes, there's death over dinner, which is a thing. There's the death deck. There's different tools you can educate yourself ahead of time, and then kind of give them a little warning, hey, can we set aside some time? And you could say, I listened to a podcast and, I'm worried about you, or my friend's dad got scammed, or, there's different ways to bring it up, but family dynamics are tough.
Yeah, it is. Which I think brings me to my next question. I think it's related, and you've already mentioned this a little bit with Daughterhood, but you're also a big advocate for people joining support groups. And I think that's part of the reason why. It's because you can have conversations with other people that have had these conversations before you have to go have it. But tell me a little bit more about why support groups are so valuable, and why does it matter so much to you?
Yeah, it matters because we want to feel seen and heard. And for, people like me, I have to get it out. But also, maybe you're in a sensitive workplace and you don't really know if you want to bring it up at work and you don't want to let your colleagues know, or dementia still has a kind of a stigma attached to it, and some people are afraid to mention it because a lot of people say, oh, well, your mom has it. You're definitely going to get it. I'm like, well, not necessarily.
Or they'll tell you like what you can do to stop it.
Oh, yeah. Totally. You can get this rare octopus ink out of New Zealand for $800 a vial and I'm like, okay, great. So yeah, I literally have heard that one. So just having a place. And the other thing that stops people is because a lot of times at Daughterhood they'll say, oh, it's my first time, but I heard about it a year ago. I'm like, but when you're in caregiver whack-a-mole, that's why I call it caregiver whack-a-mole, you're overwhelmed with everything. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't add one more thing to my schedule. I cannot. But this is easy. It's Daughterhood, especially because it's online. We have them all different times of the day, and you can have your caregiver, your person you're caring for, there with you. You can be in the hospital, you can be wherever, and we get it. It's not like we dock points if you leave halfway through, and you don't have to have your camera on. And you can just listen. And sometimes that's all we need. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm not alone. There's other people out there. So you could do online, but then in person, we have Memory Cafe, we have Death Cafe, we have things at AARP, we have groups at churches, elder law attorney offices. So once you kind of tap into that network, you'll be able to find one that works for you. And maybe the first one you don't like initially, maybe you like a different format or a different group. So, it might not be a hit the first time, but there are, just knowing that there's support out there. But it is helpful because it helps you know that you're not alone to navigate this, because also if something happens to you and you don't take care of your own mental and physical health, then what's going to happen to your person? Because that happens all the time. When the caregiver goes down, then they're like, oh my gosh, dad had a stroke and we didn't know mom has dementia. He was covering for her. And now it's a double whammy for the family.
Yeah, that is so common. I think all the time about how, and this is a hypothesis, I guess, but I think I call it community, but support group or people, your people.
Your people, yes, find your people. That's why I say find your people.
Yeah, wherever they are, and could be a Daughterhood, could be an Impera, could be at a local group in your area. There are places out there. There are spaces out there. But I believe, this is my hypothesis, I think having your people, having that community is going to be the biggest differentiator on you getting through all of this. Because not only will you have people that get it, but then you will also have people that say, oh, what really helped me is a senior care advisor, and give other resources as well. And so I think that's good. That's what makes the difference. I'm a big fan in humans and humanity. So,
well, I agree. And we talked about this. Yes. I mean, AI is going to solve all the world's problems, and we love the apps and we love the convenience, but we also know that we've never been more isolated with so many options for connection, right? That's totally true. So, and I'm a person where, I don't want to spend 30 minutes searching on this topic and trying to type in the question the right way so AI understands what I want to ask. I want to go to a human that's got experience where I can say, what does this mean? What does this mean? What do I do? How do I do it? And someone that's been in the field, they'll be like, oh yeah, to them, it's a no brainer. Oh, this, try this. So and that's what I seek out, because I'm a people person. Other people aren't, but I'm definitely a people person. And so I'm not afraid to ask the question. I'm not afraid to look stupid. I'm not afraid to figure it out. But that's my method. That's my preferred method. And I back it up with reading and research on downtime.
So speaking of, not being afraid to talk to a person, I want to ask this question next. Why do you think there's no, and maybe there is and I just don't know it, but why do you think there's not like a 988 hotline for caregivers?
Yes. Someone brought that up. They're like, why don't we have just 1-800, caregiving? And the reason is because it's nuanced, right? Caregiving is nuanced. You've got I wasn't speaking to my sister, and then I had, I'm flying to Iowa, and then I'm figuring out surgery, and then I'm trying to figure out HIPAA and, and the legal. So and every person's different. So it's like you call 1-800-caregiver. Okay, I'll press 1 for dementia, 2 for stroke, 3 for scam.
What number for myasthenia gravis?
Yeah, what? How do you even spell that? So Yeah. And then you'd be going, agent, customer service agent, oh, okay. So, okay, you'll be on hold for 99 hours. So, yeah. So that's my thing. I mean, I definitely, I'm app challenged personally, but I embrace email. I embrace video technology, and I feel like everything has its place, but you have to know how to use it to your advantage for what you need. But that's why I think having a confidant, even just having someone you can talk to. So my Aunt Nancy and I didn't lose my mom. My mom's still alive, and she still has her same mannerisms, her same voice, and she knows me, but I can't talk to her like I used to. So my Aunt Nancy, her older sister, now we're like immensely closer than we were before. So she's like my surrogate mom, my surrogate advice, my surrogate, so I mean, we're super close now because we went through this, and she was my go-to person, still is my go-to person. If I just need to break down and sob or get sad or what are we going to do about this? Cause she was with me every step of the way, because if she hadn't been, I would be dead.
It's so wonderful when you can have that. And then also, I think another good reason to have your person is sometimes you don't want somebody to tell you how to fix it. Like sometimes I was tired of people telling me about what they saw on Facebook that was going to fix my mom's problems. And 90% of the time, I try to be gracious, understanding they were just trying to, especially during the last 10 years where things were just so tough. And I just, but then the other part of me is going, don't you think we've done all that by now? Anyway, but I just would get so I would try not to say that out loud to them, because I would just say, thank you so much, or we've already tried that, or I'll look into it or whatever. But but my mom, as long as she was able, she was constantly like, I should be a vegetarian. I should be a vegan. I should, this and that. And, maybe I should do. And she tried to figure it out too, because she was like you and me. She wanted to get to the bottom of it. She was like, if I could just crack the code. But sometimes there's unknown, there's mystery, and it's just hard no matter what. And so having a place and a space where somebody just goes, yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. And I taught this class. I've taught several classes about all of this. And one of the women came up to me and she goes, well, what am I supposed to say? Because people always say, how's your mom? How's your mom? And to her, she didn't like that question. Like it kind of set her off. It triggered her. And people only were meaning well. Like they're like, well, I don't not want to ask. I want to ask to show my concern. And I said, try just saying, thank you for asking. It's complicated. And that, that shuts it down. So she thought that was helpful, because everybody's different, because other people are like, they want you to ask you about your mom so you can go into a 15-minute diatribe of what's going on and get it out.
Yeah. Well, and I would say when people would ask me, how things were going, I would say, how curious are you really? I can tell you, but if I start talking, I'm not going to stop. So how much time do you have? And just give them permission to say, then they could get more specific, is she in or out of the hospital? Or, they could get they could ask a more specific question if they were like, no, I really don't have 30 minutes.
Right. Or what you can't say is, how are you? Not how's your mom? How are you as a caregiver?
I did get on a little bit of that as well. There was a period of time where I don't know if I ever said that out loud, because, Southern belle manners but there is. But not that it's inappropriate to say, but I'd felt that way a lot. And since my mom didn't have cognitive decline till the very end, I thought I would often think, and I know she's lonely. I would often be like, well, you could call her and ask her.
Yeah, but I mean, ask how the caregiver's doing. Instead of saying, how's your mom, say, how are you?
And I think even in the context of siblings helping, a lot of times this happens. And again, everybody's situation is different. And whether your sibling is being a jerk or what, but, or not. But I do think there is this truth, and we all have a different capacity to be able to perform the duties of care. It doesn't mean that we don't care. And there's ways to contribute to the caregiving situation that isn't always, so it's not all placed on one person. But when I'm tempted to say, why is that her brother not helping? Or I tend to remind myself, We need more grace in this space than judgment. And so,
Yeah, no, my sister and I stopped speaking. It was bad. Like it was bad. And like we were even just our story was featured in a national at Market Watch, yeah, like last month. So but we reconciled. It took some time, but after things calmed down and we calmed down, it worked out. But that stuff can go on for years.
yeah, and it is hard in that, and each family has to navigate that on their own. But especially on the outside looking in, it's like I don't know that family and why so and so is not contributing the way they are, or the way I think they should. And so I try to err on the side of grace as much as possible, even if my brain is getting a little attitude.
Yeah, but that's a good way to put it. Err on the side of grace. I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now we get to talk about your book. It's called Diagnosis Dementia. You're holding it up right now. What's the subtitle?
Your Guide to Elder Care Planning and Crisis Management.
And you already told us about it a little bit, and you talked about how there are caregiving books out there. I have a memoir that talks about my experience. There's other caregiving books that walk through different aspects of caregiving. You decided to write yours with a little bit of a different lens. Can you talk about how yours is different from maybe other books out there?
Yeah, I'm very practical. So there's stories interwoven. It's kind of like a braided memoir. So there's stories interwoven about like my mom, my dad, my stepmom, because my mom was just crazy. It was crazy. I tell people it reads like a suspense novel because it's like, oh my gosh, what is she going to do next? Because I tell people, dementia or Alzheimer's is not an on-off switch in the brain. Like some days you're firing on all cylinders and other days they're short circuiting. But when she was firing on all cylinders, man, she was undoing absolutely everything we were trying to do to help her. And then she had the anosognosia, which is like the denial, the paranoia, the belief. So that was all crazy. So, it reads really fast like that. And so it's like, okay, what did we have to do then? And then we had to do this, and then we had to do that. And so it's woven into our experience. And like I said, the different languages. So I was like a whack-a-mole. So I was like, okay, we have the legal, so I have to get an elder law attorney. Okay, now we have the medical, so my aunt's a nurse, so she was managing some of that. Then we have the financial, and luckily I'm married to a CPA, so I'm like, okay, can you help with this? I was delegating, I was building my team, and then I was fighting with my sister on the side, and then we had the pandemic, and so I broke it down so you can go to each section. You can go to what are you dealing with now? Oh, and then Medicare was another absolute nightmare trying to figure out the Medicare, and Medicare and legal. Like they're very different state by state. So I was like, okay, is mom staying in California? Is she moving to New Jersey? And then she ends up moving to Maryland. It's, just like shift, pivot. So, and then I was like, what's a death doula? How does that fit into this? So I just started gathering information from people in the field on what they do, how they do it, and chunked it into the different chapters. Again, interwoven with our story, because then I love reading memoirs. And I'm like, well, how does this relative? And there's books written by physicians that talk about everything. There's memoirs, millions of memoirs and stuff, and they're all good. And but mine is literally the practical guide that you could just read one section. Like, okay, I'm in the doctor's office. Let me read about. Yeah. And my next book about the sandwich generation, because I've got the 3 parents and the 5 children and all kinds of other stories related to that. So that it's going to even break it down more. And in the 3 years since my first book came out, the Wild West of elder care has expanded exponentially. So what I do in the book, as what I do with this as a certified senior advisor, is I look at this stuff and I curate the stuff and then I vet it. Like, is this some .com dude trying to make a quick buck, or is this a legit caregiver who understands this from the inside out?
Yeah, I started doing that too, because, when I started talking about care technology, I didn't want to just be a influencer, like try this and try this and try this and try this. And I wanted to educate people on how, not all the nitty gritty of the technology, but like what we're talking about when we say AI. How does it work? What is ChatGPT doing? Is it really thinking? Like all this kind of stuff. The basics, because a lot of people they think it's fun to go on there and chit chat, but they don't really understand what it's doing. And when you come to talking about things that are really emotional and also involved with health matters, you want to, what you're dealing with. And so part of what I wanted to do was educate, but then I also wanted to connect with like you mentioned, people that are in that care tech building space where they're doing stuff and they've got their own personal reason that is grounded in some sort of, where they've been there, they've walked in those shoes, and they have the knowledge to, like you say, delegate, they get the right people in to build a product that is safe and secure, and that they have some sort of ethical guidelines, right? And so once I found a few of those, I was like, okay, this is really the kind of stuff I want to talk about. I also now have on my website, a trusted care technology page where I have, these particular tools to the point where I feel comfortable saying, I recommend these. And some, like Impera, I am on the advisory team, but others, I don't have any reason other than they're doing a great job, and I think they would make a positive difference. And so I think that's really important too, to have people in this space doing some of the vetting for us, because the more we go to the internet to tell us the answers, then we're going to get, then it just feeds into the whole.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm so freaky about like not giving out my cell phone and I mean, I confuse myself sometimes because I go to these great links to create this. I'm like, wait a minute, what did I do? So, and I'm, like I said, I'm app challenged. I'm like freaked out about AI, but then I found a video guy. My video guy, Rob, is amazing. And he said, hey, you really need to be on YouTube. And I'm not on TikTok. I'm only on the platforms I like Instagram and LinkedIn. But he said, you got to be on YouTube. So I just started releasing these, and they're 30-second video shorts just about all the basics of caregiving. So sundowning and taking the keys away and not correcting your mother. So he said, it's critical. You need to be on YouTube. So Good Daughter AZ is my YouTube channel, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there, Teepa Snow is amazing. Like all of her stuff is amazing. So, but I'm just doing my own spin on it from my perspective. But it's very controlled. It's very well produced, and it's just sitting there for people to digest at their leisure.
That's the underlying theme of this episode, is a lot of caregivers try to do everything on their own. And you're teaching us that delegation is the key. Yeah. Nicole, it has been so great having you on the podcast. And you've already mentioned some ways that people can get in touch with you. I will link all of them, including Daughterhood. The Dementia book review is your Instagram. I will put the YouTube channel, everything in the show notes. But is there anything else? If there's one thing you would want a caregiver that's watching today to walk away knowing, what would that be?
I would say, don't be afraid to talk about it. Okay, so join a support group and talk about it. But the biggest problem out there is most people are unaware. I wasn't paying attention. My mom was 3,000 miles away. I didn't know anything about any of this. And so basically most people are a phone call away from a caregiver crisis. And then you go into chaos. You're making decisions. It gets expensive. You're scrambling. So don't be afraid to talk about it. And because even if you think you might be judged or other people aren't going through this, they are. Like, I talk about it everywhere, and I talk about it in the drugstore and wherever I am. They're like, oh yeah, my mom, my grandma. So it is everywhere, and you might be able to help someone. And you don't have to, but you might be able to help someone. So most people are a phone call away. So pay attention, talk about it, because they're going to be there. And I had one neighbor friend, she's like, yeah. She's younger than me. And she's like, yeah, no, we're not really in that zone. And then literally 6 months later, her father-in-law fell down a flight of steps, 4 surgeries, elder care, assisted, she was in it deep.
And usually it's not like, okay, here's the one thing, and then a few months later, there's going to be something else. Yeah. It's like,
and that's where it's nuanced.
Yeah. Once that snowball starts, it just goes, if one thing is consistent, it's usually the snowball effect, which I think one of my recent episodes, Annalee Kruger talks about the snowball effect.
Oh, I read her book. She's from Iowa, like me. She's from Iowa. So I'm just going to say, just don't be afraid to talk about it, and talk about it because people need to be aware. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You always make me smile. And thank you for listening and watching today. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with a caregiver in your life. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so that you never miss an episode. And you can find more resources in the show notes, in the description, and on JeanetteYates.com. And until next time, feel good, not guilty.